In this lecture, we want to talk about operational data storage. This is something that is sometimes a little bit confusing because oftentimes the distinction between a data warehouse and an ODS is not so clear. And this is partly because, yes, in some sense they are a little bit similar, but also there can be different understandings and definitions depending on who you are talking to. And therefore, we want to clear things up here and focus on what is practically relevant for us. So first, let's understand what is an ODS. So an ODS is very similar to a data warehouse because we also have different operational systems, and this can be sometimes where all of the important data is stored, but we want to integrate now these different operational systems, the data of these systems, into one single database. And we also can use an ETL, and then the database in which we have integrated all of this data is our operational data storage. But now you might be asking, what is now the difference to a data warehouse? Because I've understood this is what a data warehouse is. And the key difference is that an ODS is used for operational decision making. And this makes the process a little bit different, and also the requirements of an ODS different, because it's not used for analytical or strategic decision making, but for very quick operational decision making. So before we have a look at an example, let's have a look at those different requirements in an ODS. So in an ODS, since we want to make only operational decisions, we usually have no need for a very long history. We only need the current state of the data. But this current state needs to be reflected ideally immediately from our source systems. So we have the need for a very current state of our data, which can be in some cases almost real time. And this is very important because we don't want to make operational decisions that are based on wrong data. And this is why it is different in a data warehouse where we have to make strategic decisions. So the data can be updated maybe once a day or once per hour even. And in an ODS, we don't need the history, but we need to have the data integrated as the current state of our operational systems in almost real time. And this is why we can have a data warehouse and an ODS in our company. So let's have a look at a practical example. So an ODS could be, for example, needed in the following case. Assume you are working in a financial service company, and in this financial service company, your customers, they can do different things. They can invest in ETFs, they can invest in stocks, in cryptocurrencies, they can have an account balance, and we need to find out from those different systems. So maybe we have one system for crypto, one for stock trading, and we need to combine the overall balance, the overall amount that they have invested from those different systems. And this needs to be reflected immediately so we can make our operational decisions. So this is not anything that we need to analyze and make strategic decisions, but we need to make decisions now for one customer that are operational. So for example, we need to decide, can we give this customer a credit or not? And therefore, we need to see the data as it is in these operational systems in almost real time, so that we can make accurate decisions. And also, we don't need to have a long history, but only how does the data look currently in those source systems. And therefore, we have usually in this ETL or this real-time data feed an update logic in place. So we don't append the data usually and keep the history, but we just update or replace the data. And now, how does this fit into the big picture with the data warehouse together? Can we have them both in our company? Yes, we can have them both. So we can have an ODS that uses a separate ETL with separate requirements that is transforming and integrating the data and then is used for operational decision making. And then parallel to that, we can have another ETL that maybe goes once per day or even once per hour. And then this data warehouse that is created out of that is used for the analytical decisions that are more long-term or more strategic. So you see, this is possible. But another option is a little bit more common, and this is a sequential integration. So in this case, we can still maintain our operational data storage, but we just build our ETL for the data warehouse on top of our operational data storage. Because we've already done the heavy work of integrating the data, and now we can just use this operational data storage as kind of our source, our staging layer, if you will, for our data warehouse. And with that, we just save a lot of work and effort to integrate the data because we can just use the ODS as our data source. So this can be something that can be quite helpful. But I also want to note that an ODS is getting less and less relevant. This is partly because of better performance of the hardware. So we can load just the data much quicker nowadays. And this is just making the ODS less important. And also there are nowadays other technologies that fulfill these requirements for real-time data or very fast updated data. So therefore, it is more and more uncommon to have an ODS in place in a company. But if we do have that, I want to again also, last but not least, note that don't get hung up with the terminology. Just be pragmatic. Use it if it is in place. So if there is an ODS in place in the company, you can just benefit from it, for example, and check if it's possible to use it for your ETL process, for your data warehouse as a source. So we don't want to get hung up with the definitions and terminologies, but just be pragmatic and see if you can use it for your ETL. So now we've talked a lot about the different types of architectures in our data warehouse that we now want to again summarize what we have learned in this section. And that's what we are doing in the next lecture.